Hi, it's Ray from Pro Shaper in Charlton, Massachusetts, and one of the comments on the comment thread on my YouTube channel, somebody asked, why can't you do some steel welding? Well, we did a little bit with that really inexpensive blue Chinese welder, and the results on that were really nice. But what I thought would be good tonight would be, this is 19 gauge steel. I've got two samples here. They're sheared, so it's a perfect joint. And I thought that if we did a test, or at least an examination of the differences between TIG and gas. So I'm going to weld this one first with TIG, and I've already tacked it together with the TIG, and I've used a rotary wire brush, and I've cleaned it up. I don't like the fire scale. It seems to really inhibit the welding, and it's best to get that fire scale off if you want a really nice weld. So in my aluminum welding, I was using the argon helium 50-50 mix, but on steel that's not really a good thing to do. It's a little too hot, so I just have the acetylene oxygen combo here, and we're going to be doing that next. First, we're going to weld this up with the TIG welder, with the everlast TIG welder, and we've got a 3/32 lanthanated tungsten. The lanthanated ones, I don't know if this has the blue band on it because I cut them in half. Yeah, that's it. It has the blue band on it. I use that for both aluminum and steel. And it has the big gas lens. I got a number 10 cup here. And I tacked this together already, fusion tacks with the TIG. I just can't imagine that you can tack with gas as well as you can fusion tack with gas as well as you can do with a TIG. The fusion tacks with a TIG are just incredibly simple to do, and the heat affected zone is tiny. There's no distortion of the panel, and they weld all the way through. The penetration's all there. It's just, you couldn't ask for a better tack. And then what I did was I cleaned them up with the wire brush and then put them on the Planischen hammer, and I just leveled them a little bit and took a little bit of the shrinkage out, because it'll shrink anytime you add heat to sheet metal. It'll shrink a little bit. So they're nice and flat now, and good examples. And what I'm going to do with both the TIG and the gas is I'm going to weld half of it adding rod, and I have 030 rod here. So I'm going to go halfway with the 030 rod, and then I'm going to fusion tack the rest of it with the TIG. Then I will do the exact same thing with the gas. Then I'll clean them up and I'll probably power hammer them, and then you'll be able to see the results all the way through. So here we go. We're going to use the rod first halfway. We have 40 amps on the TIG welder here, and let's look at the other settings if you want. We're running 40 amps. This is 40 thousandths 19 gauge steel, and we have post flow 2.1, pre-flow 0.4, and 40 amps. So it's pretty basic. There's no pulse on here. I'll do the pulse some other time. So here we go. I got a little lint on the tip here. Yeah. I have a little piece of angle iron here underneath, and I'll just keep it off the bench so it doesn't suck up all the heat. So here we are. Now just check to make sure we're getting good penetration. Yep, looks great. And I think I'll lighten my helmet just a little bit. Just a little more. Alright, so now we're at the halfway point. That was with about half pedal too. I didn't go pedal to the metal here. It looks like we got good penetration. If you can actually see that with the camera, I'm not sure. There's some little undercutting under there. That's typical because the oxygen is attacking that a little bit on the backside. If we coppered that, the weld would look as nice as the front side. So another time we'll try the copper on there. The copper blocks the oxygen off the weld, gives you effectively like a backgas condition. Now, we're going to fusion this the rest of the way. I just want to check it to make sure I got enough heat there. Yep, looks really good. So there is that top. Of course, you don't have the weld bead. There are some undercuts here, and then you have excellent penetration all the way through, and you have a little drop through here. You have actually it looks better here on the back side than the adding the rod. The adding the rod has some divots and stuff. But you'll notice that the heat affected zone, when I added the rod, the heat affected zone here is about a good inch, maybe 1.1 inches here in the widest part. In the widest part here it's about 1 inch, and the narrowest is about 3/4 or so. So it's a pretty narrow heat affected zone by and large. So that one's done, and now we'll do the gas one. All right, now we have the gas torch. I have a Smith's. I have several different gas torches. I have that Nico that you saw with the aluminum welding. And then also I have one of the Dillon or the Cobra welders, and we'll show that some night too. But right now we're just going to use the Smith's. And this has a number 2 tip on it. So we're nice and tight. I'm going to fire this up. I'm going to get a neutral flame. My regulator's making noises. Well, it's funny how these things happen. I have Victor regulators, and I lit it up and been using it for years, and all of a sudden it just started pulsing, and it wouldn't stop pulsing. I tried cranking it and everything, and nothing. So I took the other Victor regulator I have off of another torch, so I'm back in business. So here we go. So we got a number 2 tip Smith's torch. We're going to bring this down to, it starts to smoke. Bring your oxygen in. This is acetylene oxygen. We bring the feather, get a nice neutral flame. And we're going to add rod here first. And away we go. Too hot. Now I have to say that I never gas weld. I TIG weld exclusively. I'm pretty rusty. That's why I got it a little too hot, too close. It popped a couple times. No big deal. Didn't get that great a penetration on that one. All right, so let's see. We'll check this again here. Now we'll fusion the rest of it. That was adding rod. I have to admit the fusion was a lot easier. And we'll probably do the same thing with some aluminum welding again. So I did get pretty good penetration there. There's a few spots that are open, but that would be fine. So let's clean this up with the wire brush and we'll take a really good look at what we got. So you can see the direct heat effective zone comparison. This we had on the gas with the fusion. There's undercut there. It dropped through. That will cold forge back up. My adding rod was a little unsteady. I did 2 pops. That's just because I'm not welding every day. I'm probably going to get a couple negative comments on that, but that's okay. I'm a big boy. So, like again, I wouldn't gas weld any of my steel sheet metal welding anyways. To me, just close observation, there's like no comparison. This is so much cleaner, less heat affected zone, and to me it's a real hard sell argument saying that gas on steel is better. On aluminum, yeah, you can make the argument that aluminum can be better and faster than TIG, but there's some counter arguments there too. So let's clean this up with the wire brush. We'll grind it a little bit, and we'll show you the results after the wire brushing. We'll get a good observation of the welds both sides, and then we'll put them in the power hammer and then squash them down, and you can see, maybe then throw them in the English wheel and dress them up really nice, and you'll be able to see the direct results of both. All right, so now I've taken both samples and wire brushed them with a rotary wire brush to get all that fire scale off. This is the gas one. This is where we added the rod. I have to admit it wasn't the best because I overheated a little bit, popped it a couple times. You got a little bit of drop through here, a couple little bit of opens. This was fusion. That went a lot smoother. Got a heavy undercut on it here. It all dropped through. That should cold forge back up and should fill up pretty good, but there'll probably be some areas that'll be divoted. This is the TIG sample all cleaned up. You can see the weld beads really nice and pretty uniform, and on the back side we got a little bit of drop through, but there's some like stronger little divoted areas. The fusion, that went pretty sweet. There's a few little divots on the top, and the back side we got a real minimal drop through. Now what we're going to do next now is I'm just going to do a light grind on both of these. It won't take much, and I'll show you after the light grind, and then I'll power hammer them and crush them in, and then English wheel them a little bit, and they should look really good. And we'll notice maybe a little bit of divots here and there, and some parts of it will be perfect. So that's next, the grinding. Alright, so here we are over at the power hammer. This is my Pro Shaper power hammer. We designed and built it here at the shop. And we're going to crush this weld down. I had a light hit on it. That took out all the distortion from the heat and leveled it back up again. So it took the shrink out of it. This was the TIG one, and they could still stand a little bit of grinding, so I'm just going to hit them with the grinder one more time. Then we'll put it in the English wheel, and then we'll torture test them just like we did the aluminum pieces. I power hammered the welds. I ground them with 50 Norton Blaze 3-inch roll lock, and then with my foam pad 2-inch little grinder I ran over them with 80 grit and also 120 both sides, and then I put them in the wheel and I just wheeled them for about a half a minute each, about a minute each I guess. So this was the TIG one here, and you can see here, let's see, this is the front side, and this side here I added the rod, and there's one little tiny divot right here. This was the fusion here, and there's a couple divots here, and that's generally my experience that when you do TIG fusion you're going to end up with a little bit of divoting. There is those divots on the back side of where I added the rod. There's a little bit over here, but not bad. So overall I think that looks pretty good. The heat affected zone was very tiny. It was very easy to clean the weld with the wire brush to get all that fire scale off. And overall I think that's a pretty nice panel. Now we'll hit these with the ball peen hammer and see if we can break the welds open. And it'll be a surprise to me if either one of them break, but we'll see. So that's that one, and now this is the oxyacetylene one, and this is where I excuse me, this is where I added the rod. It was the 030 rod, and it looks pretty good. I had a little divot here and a little divot here, and that's probably where I popped it, and I overheated a little bit and it'll pop on you. So that would have been probably perfect had it not been overheated. And this is where I did the fusion, and there's a considerable undercut here, which I don't like because you're going to have to use fillers on that unless you go in and close up all these undercuts with some more weld, which always leads to a lot more time and is not as successful as you would think sometimes, because it causes a lot more shrinkage and you have to beat it out and everything. So undercuts, if you leave them, they're going to have to be filled with some kind of filler. And all of those in a hot sun environment where the skin of the car can go to 130 degrees easily, those will shrink in. So if you're going to do welds, ideally what your weld wants to look like is this, where it has no divots or any undercuts. On the back side, it doesn't matter so much. You can have a little bit on the back side. If you're really careful, you can actually get good backside and front side, both aluminum and steel. But you got to really take your time and do it right. And some people, like to do stuff really fast and always in a hurry, but it depends on what kind of results you want. So let's take these now, and we'll go over to the beater bag, and we'll hit them with the ball peen hammer. All right, the first one we'll do will be the gas sample. We'll hit that. We're going right on the seam. We'll hit both sides. So there's no evidence of any fatigue or anything there. Looks pretty good. That's that one. That passed the test. Now we'll go to the TIG one. There's no evidence of any fatigue on that one either. So they both passed the torture test. So they're both valid ways of doing it. Some people prefer to gas weld. Some people prefer to TIG weld. You can do excellent results with both methods. It all depends on what you're comfortable with. Myself, I like TIG by far. So I hope that helps. It's Ray Chalene from Charlton, Massachusetts.